Any moment now, it can pop off. Hard times are coming, ladies and gentlemen. Hard times are coming. Now, we all know what's being said in the news, but in this channel, I shoot straight with you. This channel is not about politics, but I believe that this will affect every one of us financially, our life, our kids' life, our friends' life, our family's life, because what's happening right now is just ludicrous. And I want to take the moment and explain why it'll be hard time if we do have World War III happen. Okay, now just a perspective. I love America, but I want to shoot it straight with you because I'm a war baby. That means like I was born in a war, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. That we in America, we don't produce anything. Okay, we're not self-sufficient. We don't even have factories to make bicycles. We don't even have factories to make X or Y or Z. There's very little factories here. The corporations of America have outsourced the labor and resources of other countries to make profits in the American consumer, me and you, okay? So what that has done has eliminated or handicapped us not to be self-sufficient. Now, this is a very, very important message because when you're not self-sufficient, when you don't have the ability to produce the stuff you need, everything, I'm talking about everything, and you're trading with other countries, and then you tariff them, and then you sanction them, and then you go to war with them, one major problem that's going to happen is that we are not going to have the supplies that we need. We just saw what happened with COVID, that none of the masks were produced in America. It was produced in China. The defibrillators, respirators, whatever it's called, that medical device that helps you breathe, wasn't produced here, right? And they had to stop Ford and Chevy and things of that nature to make these products, okay? Recondition the whole factory for a new product or idea. So the point I'm trying to say here is that other countries, for example, let's just take Iran, for example, they've been sanctioned. They've been, they haven't been able to trade with majority of the world because they've been cut off from the Swiss system and so on. So Iran has become very self-sufficient. Yes, the country is going through a hard time because they can't trade medicine, or they can't get this, they can't get that, okay? Therefore, they have to make it. So they make their own weaponry, they make their own lumber, they make their own breads, they make their own wheats, they make their own rice, they make their own gas, they make everything in-house. Sure, it's not as efficient as a country that can freely exchange and barter with other countries, okay? But they became very sufficient. Where, for example, if you look at us in America, we're not sufficient because we don't make our own clothes, we don't make our own bicycles, we don't make this, we don't make that. Very small amount of things are only made in America, like weaponry, okay? But we need more than that to eat as a society. So when we're talking about going in, to war with, for example, Russia, and now we're going to have World War III because with NATO being involved, all these other countries are getting into it, and because America wants to get into this war. And guess what? We're not going to have the products that we need to survive because, more than likely it's going to be like Russia and Iran and North Korea and China, right? Versus the NATO European countries like Great Britain and, America, Australia, Canada, okay? And a lot of the Poland and, so it's going to be a worldwide war, okay? Now, I'm not even talking about the nuclear aspect of it. I'm just talking about just the simple supply chain. I mean, today we're having supply chain because people are on strike. Okay, imagine having supply chain problems even when people are working because we don't have the raw materials to make the goods, because we don't have the factories, because our corporations wanted to outsource it out because they were more worried about profits for themselves and their stockholders versus the community. Okay, so now we're talking about going to war with countries like Russia, that are self-sufficient because of all the tariffs and all the sanctions. I don't know if you guys know that, for example, Russia provides 40% of all the fuel used in Europe. Okay, now think about what's happening in Europe. People are at arms and protesting because the cost of fuel is rocketing. Now, does it make sense that we're going to a war right now? In one way, Russia has the natural resources that Europe is really looking for, right? Because the cost of fuel, the gas, and this is just skyrocketing over there. Okay, and we see it in America with the gasoline part, but we don't see it with natural gases and other stuff yet. So it's a coincidence that prices are rocketing and they want to go to the source that has that stuff. That's a probability, right? Now, regarding going to war with a country that's more self-sufficient than us, their economy is already hurt because of all the sanctions and all the stuff, right? It's not going to go much more deeper, and the people already figure out how to survive. Where ours will just dramatically just stop, and then we would have to refactory, rekey, in the meantime, there's going to be chaos, okay? Chaos, and it saddens me. It seems like I'm laughing, but it's just the inability to be sufficient. It's kind of like having two kids. One kid you teach how to go start his own business, trade, and teach him the skills that he or she needs, and they can start businesses. And the other one, you always subsidize their living. You give them this for their rent, you give them this for their food. Then eventually it's time for them to go into the real world. Well, one kid's not going to be able to make it. It's as simple as that, because he was just giving something by handout. And what I mean by that is by us not having factories, us not producing stuff here besides weaponry. Okay, we can't eat off all that stuff. There's millions of people in here. We've lost the ability to be self-sufficient, and that's something we have to think about before we want to go to war with all these countries that provide us all the natural resources that we need. Okay. Now the other thing is that I don't want war. It doesn't matter, if it's from Russia, if it's from China, if it's from Venezuela. It's just like war is just like such an old idea. I want peace and love. I want prosperity. I want free trade, because the more we trade with other countries, the less likely are we to go to war. I mean, the last president just caused so much stress with China because of the sanctions and the tariffs and blah, blah, blah. Now we see prices increasing. We see so many other hardships happening. Okay. So also talking about hardships, I mean, does it make sense that, in Europe, the stock market is crashing? In America, the stock market is crashing. And in all these G7 countries, right, these developed countries, their stock market is crashing. Their fiat currency is, decoupling down as fast as you can imagine. That's what inflation is, that the purchasing power, it gets decreased. There's more of it. The paper is worth less. So is that a coincidence as well? I mean, is it a coincidence that the dollar is in trouble? Is it a coincidence that, we're having massive stock market crash, and at the same exact time that we're also going to be having another war? Okay. Now, we have to think about that. The other thing we have to think about is that we're going to be fighting a war all across the sea. It's not in our own home. It's not in our own backyard. Okay, we're going to be fighting a war in someone else's home, and it's Russia's home. That's their home field, man, right? They know the area. This is, we're killing their kids right in front of their parents. Everyone's going to be into it because we're in their backyard, right? And you bet they're going to fight. I mean, and they're going to fight hard, and it's not like they're coming to our backyard. And the other point is, I don't know if you guys ever looked at the map, NATO is surrounding Russia in every direction. How will we feel like if Russia or China was like, hey, man, I'm going to set up shop in Canada, and I'm going to put this many military there, and I'm going to set up shop in Mexico, and I'm going to put this much military? We wouldn't like that, right? And so that's how they're feeling with, Ukraine joining NATO. And if you look at the map, I mean, NATO and America's bases are all surrounding China, all surrounding Russia. And, not saying that those guys are good guys or bad guys, but I think that we should be, leaders and by modeling, rolling that we want peace and democracy, and we're the light. We are the logic versus like, hey, let's fight. And we just came from a war that we were basically defeated in Afghanistan, right? We were there such a long time, and in the day, the same guys who were fighting now are in charge, okay? And let's not forget how many wars we've been to since the 1990. Like, since 1990, we've been into 18 wars, ladies and gentlemen. I counted before I started this audio. I was like, I couldn't believe it. 18 different wars, okay? So who profits from that, right? So, the crazy thing is a lot of people are going to die. And I mean, the possibility of the world ending because of nuclear fallout, the possibility of 10, 15 years of hardships, think about it. Russia's a tough country. I personally have had friends from Russia as I grew up, and none of them were, a pushover. And also, if you look at, and I'm going to shoot straight with you, if you look at today, the conditioning of the American people, right? If you look at obesity, it's 50-something%. You see obesity in kids, you see obesity in moms, dads, all ages, young, 20 as 3 years old and up, okay? Well, and for example, in Russia, I don't see that much obesity. In Iran, I don't see that much obesity. In China, I don't see that much obesity. So, I mean, like, we're going against people that are self-sufficient, okay, because we force them to be self-sufficient. And they're also, their population is more fit. You know what I mean? I mean, like, honestly, if you just look around, if you're just honest with yourself, half the population is obese, right? And if not, they got a big fat belly, and that's, because we live in a world of excessive, calories, excessive lavish lifestyle, because we have the world reserve currency, and we can, basically get all the people's other countries' natural resources for fake dollars, right? That we print from the printing machine. Now the people start to realize that, inflation, that printing money is not great. But before, say 2016, no one even thought about printing press was a bad thing. Okay, so it's kind of scary. I got 2 kids. I'm sure some of you ladies and gentlemen may have kids, and just to send your kids away to war, or I express that I'm a war baby, and that what that means is, like, when I was in Iran, just maybe 2 or 3 years old, there was a war with Iraq and Iran, and I can remember, like, sirens, and my family and I'm just very small, very, very small, but just imagine how harsh the memories are that we had to go hide when we heard the sirens, and a few minutes later we would hear the ground boom, and then hear the ground vibrate, because of bombs being thrown. And now we're talking about bombs that, take out the whole city, every life form, from the plants, from the butterfly, from the birds, to every human, every child, every grandma, every kid, every craziness, right? Sometimes I feel like, maybe aliens took over the elites in the human race, and they just want us to, like, kill ourselves because it is pretty crazy, right? Now, do I think that that Russia has a saying? I mean, of course they have some saying. They don't want it to be surrounded. We wouldn't want them in our backyard, so they don't want us to be in their backyard. But again, sending all those troops, NATO sending all this stuff, and and Ukraine is not even a NATO country, so that's the thing. Now, looking at it, all different possibilities from the economy, from Europe having fuel crisis, their populations are picking up the forks and protesting, all the way down to all the fiat dollars crashing, all the way down to the economies of all these G7 countries in a shamble. Maybe that's the reason they need war. Maybe that's the reason they need more resources, But I think that's a very dangerous thing. I think that, we should just figure a way to do it peacefully, man. Incentivize them versus dropping bombs, because some people are making money. The merchants of death are making money. Like they selling those bombs, all these equipments going out there. Some people's kids and daughters and husbands and wives and mothers are getting slaughtered, right? That's sad. Anyways, guys, if that stuff happens, then you can kiss your cryptos, you can kiss your gold, you can kiss your way of life goodbye, because none of that stuff's going to matter. And that's why I wanted to take this time to do this video, because I'm not political or anything like that. I'm a financial, I just want to be my dreams. I want you to be your dreams, and not work for the man. So, but I think that this involves that, because without a environment of growth and happiness and kindness and at least fairness, I should say, the very minimum fairness, right? Then the people can't grow, right? And in a situation where there's ravages and war and missiles coming to your backyard, and those are not great scenes. I know we haven't seen that in America because we're always been fighting wars other places, but we don't want that. I came from that as a war baby, and I can tell you, it sucked. I was just a couple of years old, right, and I still remember it. So imagine as older people. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you could, click the like button. Always remember, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you ever imagined. Romy.